Fantastic. Well, thank you, Lori, for having us on today. It's always a pleasure to participate with you guys. Thomas has told me a lot about what you guys are up to, and it's really fantastic. We've got hopefully a very helpful presentation today. A little bit of background about me. I'm an executive advisor for Coffee and Dunn. I have about 35 years of business experience in all phases of different business, and probably my claim to fame in marketing is really not as a marketer, even though I have been a marketer, but my claim to fame is really as a user of marketing. And I've built a lot of businesses over my career using marketing as a tool for generating demand. So hopefully some of the insights that we'll share here will be quite useful and beneficial to the audience. You know, there's a magic moment where marketers finally have arrived at the point where they've got their marketing automation investment approved and a green light from their executive management. Maybe have gone through weeks, months, in some cases that I've been through myself, years of achieving the funding level to make the investments to allow us to have a new demand generation engine to really let marketing do what marketing can really do in the demand generation side. So this presentation is really all about how to help the marketers who have arrived at the point in their careers where they now have a tool and they've got to answer the questions of, now that I have it, what do I do with it, right? Where and how do I start? Do I have the resources and the time to really make this be an effective implementation? And last but not least, how do I make sure I have the very best ROI? Now, we have some data from Circle Research that shows about 40% of marketing automation implementations take 2 years to reach the point where the users in that business all agree that that demand generation engine is effectively impacting revenue. And unfortunately, only about 8% of implementations are able to show a positive impact on sales in the first 6 months. In my career, I've been asked to show a positive ROI on almost every investment I've ever made inside 6 months. So what we've tried to do is put together a compilation of really good tips to help marketers, sales leaders, and IT executives maximize their opportunity to hit revenue, impact revenue fast, and really get the most out of this. Now, the whole story is documented in a nice paper that we put together. This paper is called Maximizing the Return on Investment of Your Marketing Automation Implementation. It covers in a lot more detail than I'm going to cover today what the key tips are. But what we've done here for this presentation is we've derived the 7 key tips that are embedded in this paper. I really would encourage everybody who's on the call to go to our website, download this paper, email me, email Thomas, and get the full thing. I think it really has some helpful hints that will be useful for everyone. So let's start looking at the 7 tips. Tip number 1, start small, but start smart. This is really important. There's an old saying, you can't eat the elephant all at one time. So it's important to start off with a nice, well-defined palette. A palette that has a clear scope, a palette that really exercises all the stakeholders. And by that, I mean your key marketers, your key sales leaders, your key product managements or business unit teams, your IT folks. Make sure that all of them have something to do in the palette so that they can exercise both the technical and the social interactions that are involved in the marketing automation implementation. And believe me, it's the technical and the social interactions that really make the difference between a win and a loss. Make sure that pilot's winnable, right? If you start off with a pilot, you want to make sure you pick a pilot you know you can win in, and build a communication strategy. You know, go and have a really proactive internal and external communication strategy. And don't underestimate how important the internal communication is, because you want to drive a lot of positive energy early in your implementation. So start small, but start smart. Tip number one. Tip number two, get aligned. At Coffee Done, we believe that alignment is the big A of marketing, right? Alignment is the key, and marketing automation tools and marketing automation strategies can really help an overall company develop a more aligned go-to-market strategy. So get aligned is the second tip. It's about empowering an implementation team, helping that implementation team establish good, solid governance, put in place a regular cadence, when and how they report to a steering team or to an executive sponsor. And last but not least, use a playbook approach. Every winning team I've ever been involved in has a playbook so that everybody knows what the play is, when to do what, who does what, and where we're supposed to be at what time. So those are really important tips. The third tip, use the A-team. This is an important investment. Use your best people. Make sure that the A-team has got key stakeholders in all the different departments that may be affected. Certainly marketers, sales, IT are key. Depending on your organization, it could be your business partners, product line, it could be your distribution partners, other channel partners, whoever those people are, get them on the team. And also make sure your influencers, the people who aren't directly involved in marketing automation, or maybe even not directly involved in sales, but have a lot of influence. It could be a key thought leadership person, a mentor, those type of people. Get them involved in the team. And make sure that team is enabled and empowered. Now, there's a big difference between enablement and empowerment. Enablement is about providing that team with the tools, the education, and the know-how. Empowered is taking the leash off and letting them make decisions about how this pilot runs. That's risky and it feels kind of weird at times, but believe me, that will help your implementation be successful. And last but not least, once you have those two things in place, enabled and empowered, then as a leader, you can feel quite comfortable also having that team be accountable for results. The next tip, this is kind of my favorite because I have been through this so many times. I call this mind your garden. Now, when I first bought my first house, I went off and I started building flower beds everywhere around the house. You know, I was just so passionate about trying to build a beautiful house. And sure enough, after the first year, I had this lovely garden, fantastic. It was, you know, really, really stood out in the neighborhood. 2 years later, it was full of weeds, it was full of grass. The deal was I had a huge appetite, but I didn't really realize what it would take to maintain all that. And I found out through my career that that happens a lot. It happens a lot in almost every function that I've ever been involved in. So I always try to advise people to really keep mind your garden. Keep it simple. Practice now so that you can sustain what you have in that garden later. And then don't add a lot of things that you really haven't thought through how you're going to sustain. You don't want to end up at a point in your implementation where someone says, well, what about this subscription service that nobody's looking at the results on, or blah, 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 whatever that may be. Mind your garden. Keep it simple. Make sure you're ready to sustain it and be ready to practice. Next tip, check the tech. Right? It's so important that you get early involvement from your IT partners. You want to look upstream and downstream and how all the different data streams need to hand off up and down the technology stack. I think it's really important that we develop a requirements vision. You know, that you as a team lay out the vision of what you hope your marketing automation implementation will achieve. Lay that vision out, and then ultimately use that to build a digital roadmap. And remember, you don't have to scale it all at once. Lay out a digital roadmap that follows that requirements vision, and then get your IT partners, your sellers, your marketers all involved in laying out that overall strategy. Next tip, think continuous improvement. It's not all going to be done on day one. Think continuous improvement. You can make incremental improvements as you go through the pilot. Set up good measurements. We all should know that what we measure tends to improve, and we don't have to have super complex measurements. They can be simple, visible, local, friendly, dirty metrics. That's what I prefer. Measure things that will help you set incremental goals. Then set up a regular cadence for review of your indicators. Set that cadence up for review of indicators with your implementation team and also with your steering team or executive sponsors. And last but not least, I think it's really important early into your implementation to set SMART goals. And just as a reminder, SMART goals are goals that are specific, they're goals that are measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. That's the kind of process that I think that I've certainly observed over my career that really helps an implementation team use metrics to guide them toward continuous improvement of all the results. Next, I want to talk about partnering with a pro. You know, it's really interesting to me that in so many things in our lives, we will engage with a professional without really giving much second thought to it. If you're like me in my lifetime, I've had a number of my kids in different sporting events where we hired in special trainers or coaches, dance classes, many other things in your life where bringing in a pro is something that's just normal. But oftentimes in business, we have a reluctance to do that. I found that bringing in a professional who's been involved with implementations helps develop some objectivity to what it is that you're trying to achieve. They'll look at they'll be able to see the forest despite the trees, so to speak. They'll bring in an external perspective. Maybe the professional will bring in a view from an industry that parallels, but maybe isn't directly in the industry that you're involved in. A professional organization can help you improve your efficiency. They may be able to help you synergize the resources that you have, or help the resources that you have multitask so that we can get more done with fewer resource investments. And they may bring an experience level that is unique or specialized to your implementation. So I think that's a great tip, to really look at how to bring in the right partner and use them to help with an implementation. So quick summary, 7 tips in summary. Start small, but smart. You know, identify the pilot that you think is winnable. Use that pilot to build energy, and use that energy then to help you move from your pilot to your full rollout. Use this as an opportunity to design a system that creates alignment, that alignment doesn't just happen by accident, that you do it intentionally. Again, I think an important part of alignment is the use of a playbook. I'm a huge advocate of playbooks, and I've used them many, many times in a lot of very complex implementations, and it's a great tool. Use the A-team. Make sure that the A-team is enabled and empowered so that you can hold them accountable. Put your best people on these implementations, and let them shine. Let them really get out there and do what they do well. Mind the garden. Don't let it get so complicated that you end up planting a bunch of activities that you can't sustain. So think smart, keep it simple. Check the tech, get the right people involved in that. Make sure your IT folks are involved early and often. Make sure you lay out a vision of a requirements platform, and then lay out a roadmap of how you'll go from point A to point B. Think about it. Think about continuous improvement. We don't have to have, don't expect that you'll have 100% of the results from day one. Make incremental improvements as you go through the process. Try something. There's nothing like an experiment to just try a different email strategy, try a different contact strategy, try a different nurturing strategy. Keep it small, but try many, many different increments and drive toward continuous improvement. And then partner with a pro. Again, bringing someone from the outside that can help you think objectively, bring an outside view, can really help push your implementation faster toward a more successful implementation. Then a bonus tip, follow a sound methodology. And at Coffee Done, we've developed a methodology that we call plan, build, and run. And this is really kind of our foundational methodology. It's designed to ensure that we have both a strategic and tactical marketing strategy to help you implement your demand generation process. In our planning phase, we work toward aligning marketing, aligning sales, aligning IT leadership to really lay out that agenda for marketing. Building is where we set side by side with implementation to activate the technology, get the technology implemented, do a quick start so that the technology is ready to roll from day one and is able to scale the speed. That's another key part. And then the last thing is run, where we provide a managed marketing service to help drive demand generation or full end-to-end marketing. So some key next steps, if I could, a few next steps I think might be of interest to you. We've taken these tips and the white paper that we've put together, and we've taken those and put them into a 10-point assessment that you can use or your partners can use that help them self-assess how ready they are to do their own marketing and implementation. The idea here is pretty straightforward. We often think that we're ready because we have the tool, without really thinking about all the preparation work that needs to be done in advance. So this is a very simple tool that Thomas and I are more than happy to share with you. We also plan to publish this at some point on our website, but it's a simple point assessment that lets the marketing leader or the sales leader do a self-awareness check through 10 specific points. They kind of grade themselves, assign their own point value, and then at the end of that, we provide some feedback about how, based on their own self-assessment, how ready they are to move forward, with some recommendations of things that they might want to spend a little bit more time in preparation for. Download and read the paper. We think it'll be quite useful and helpful for those of you who have not had a chance to do that. And then last but not least, spend some time with someone who's been there and done it. Again, whether that's a colleague or a friend or a consultant, sharing some of the experiences that have been gained with various marketing and automation implementations will really help you gain insight, help you observe some of the lessons learned to help risk reduce your implementation. So I'd like to once again thank you for your attention today. We would love to see if there's any questions we can answer, some dialogue back and forth, but certainly feel free to contact us at info@coffeedone.com. Contact me, Philip Sarles, at coffeedone.com, or Thomas. We'd love to engage in a dialogue, but let's see if we have any questions that we can respond to now.
All right, fabulous. Thanks so much, Philip. Fun presentation. So yes, now is your time. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. So you can pop them into the questions panel. Otherwise, you can raise your hand within the tool. We can unmute your line, and would love to have your question either way. So let's see here. Just one comment about recording. We did record today's event and we'll get it popped up into our content library. Oh, give us an hour or so and we'll have that out to you. We'll send you the link directly to if you registered for the event so you can get to that if you'd like to share with others or watch. So let's see here. Any hands raised, questions? We have a quiet audience this morning, Philip, it looks like. Let's see. No questions at this time. Or Thomas, anything you'd like to add?
Well, one thing that there may be some curiosity about is this approach and these tips. How universal are they? We work with a number of marketing automation solutions, and frankly, in my lengthy career, like Philip's, have done all kinds of implementations and transformation work. And what I would say is that these tips really apply to almost any transformation, and certainly as it relates to the technology that's in play for Dynamics, any of the marketing automation solutions that are available, this same approach is very applicable. It's foundational in terms of how to think about changing the business from current state to future state. And I think quite often we see that there's an overemphasis on the software, the particular application itself. The application is very important, and obviously it's maybe the catalyst for change. But when you don't follow some of these foundational tips, where you don't have the right stakeholders involved or don't have a good understanding of the processes that surround technology, you don't have a steering team, there's a lot of risk that gets introduced into that transformation project. And so what we found is, by taking a thoughtful approach, applying these tips to really any transformation project, and certainly marketing is kind of front and center here, you have a much higher chance of success. And by use of the pilot that Philip points out, you have a chance to kind of course correct as you go, and then move quickly into that continuous improvement and optimization phase. So we've seen this approach be very successful across a number of different applications, to drive out success a little bit more quickly. So just some extra pointers.
Right.
Lori, I see a question here about the pilot.
Yes.
I can jump in and offer thoughts, and then Philip, if you have any as well. As it relates to marketing automation specifically, what we've seen is that typically maybe a 6 to 8 week pilot could obviously be a little bit less, could be a little bit longer, depending on the size of the enterprise and the overall complexity of scope. But in cases where there's a reasonable size enterprise with maybe multiple product lines or multiple divisions, marketing into different regions, different countries, what we've landed on is an approach where we identify some basic capabilities in typically one market that allow us to prove out how the software and the process is going to work for that market, and then roll it out, very rapidly based on learnings from that pilot. Again, depending on the size of the enterprise, maybe it could be even quicker, but we've tended to see, probably 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to do the pilot, and give you some time to see the results of the pilot, meaning some of the email response, the web activity, learn a little bit more about the customer journey during that process, and also how to optimize the software. And then, again, feed that into your forward roadmap where you roll it out, globally or across all divisions, all users, and so forth. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. Thomas, I'd added that on how large the team should be. A good size is probably somewhere in 8 to 12. Much more than that is gets to be a little bit complex. But the important thing is to make sure that the key stakeholders are there and are represented. So in my mind, the key roles, you clearly need a marketing leader, and in most cases, a marketing person should be the kind of the implementation team coordinator or leader. So that will definitely be a key role. Someone from IT virtually always needs to be involved, again, because it's a technology integration. You want to make sure it's as seamless as possible. Now, some will be more complex than others, but you definitely want to make sure you have at least someone from IT that's part of that. I think it's so important that someone, at least one person from sales, is there to represent the voice of customer and represent the sales process. Because a big part of marketing automation is about developing leads and nurturing. And there's going to be SLAs, service level agreements, that have to be agreed to and negotiated between marketing and sales about what is a good lead and when does that lead really become a sales lead that can be handed over. So that has to be really important. Those are at minimum, and again, depending on your organization and your business model, you may also have people from your channel sales or distribution channels or other types of involvement from that.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
Philip, one other thing. Oh, sorry. One other quick thought is, to the extent, the number 8 sounds too big. I think part of that structure is that you have kind of heavy participation from the roles that Philip just mentioned, but there's also, a steering team. So typically when we've executed projects like this, there's big involvement right up front at the kickoff, and then the core team, so to speak, drives it forward, and that's typically a little bit smaller team. It does have representation that's outlined from marketing, sales, and IT, and then there's periodic engagement with the steering team just to ensure that the overall business objectives haven't changed and that key milestones are being met. And of course, if there's any significant decisions, and often there can be, when you get to that alignment question around sales and marketing, that's where your steering team can really help negotiate the right answer for how to interact between sales and marketing and own contacts and customers and so forth. So I think the team in total, can be large, but the core team typically can be a little bit smaller.
Okay, we did have a question that came in here also. Typically, how large should your stakeholder team be, and what roles should be involved?
I think that's the one we just answered that.
I'm sorry, Thomas.
That's okay. Hopefully that's clear.
That is clear. Let's see here. All right. I don't see any other questions in the queue, so I think we will go ahead and close out. I know that Philip and Thomas are always willing to help. Thomas does a great job at definitely being involved with the user group. So if there's any questions that come up, I would encourage you to reach out to them directly. You can see the info at coffeedone.com link or alias on your screen. Also continue the conversations within the forum. We always encourage that. Sometimes you're sitting at your desk after the meeting and thinking, oh, I wish I would have asked this. So definitely ways to get more answers after this event today. So Philip and Thomas, want to thank you guys for sharing today, and as always being such supporters of the user group. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
You're more than welcome. It's a pleasure.
All right, and as we close up, you are going to receive a brief survey. Appreciate you taking a couple moments to fill out that survey. And what other marketing topics do you guys want to hear about, right? There's a comment section within that survey. Always looking for topics, specifically, in relation to this session today around marketing. What else would you like to hear about? Because I know we have great presenters such as Thomas and Philip that would be happy to share with you all. We just sometimes would love to have your ideas, so let us know. All right, let's go ahead and wrap. We look forward to having you join us on an upcoming event. But thanks for being here today, and have a good one. Take care, all.
Thank you.